I still remember that day with a clarity that haunts me. The day everything I had been holding together, with cheap tape and stubborn hope, finally snapped. It was July 12th, one of those scorching Fresno afternoons where the sun feels like it's sitting just above your skull, pressing down until even breathing feels like work. The air was so hot and thick it vibrated. People hid inside air-conditioned rooms like the heat was a punishment sent directly by God. Noah Rowe had just turned 30. Not exactly where little me imagined adult me would be. I wasn't a CEO, not a rising star, not some genius entrepreneur. I was a warehouse associate at Amazon, a job that wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. I showed up every day, first to clock in, last to clock out. I carried the heaviest loads, covered shifts when others called out, laughed even when I was exhausted. My co-workers called me Noah the Clown because I was always humming, joking, doing stupid little impressions just to make someone's 10-hour shift feel 5 minutes lighter. But that day stripped away everything. Manager Sanders, stone-faced, robotic, a man whose smile I suspected was only a myth, called me into his office. My stomach dropped the moment I saw the envelope on his desk. He didn't even bother with small talk, just slid the paper toward me and recited the line, like a bored actor reading a script he didn't believe in. The company is doing layoffs due to budget reasons. You're number 27 on the list. Today is your last day. My ears rang. My hands shook around the paper. 7 years of sweat. 7 years of back pain, bruises, overtime, all condensed into one emotionless sentence. Sir, I've never broken any rules. I've been performing well, right? I whispered, voice cracking. Before I continue, tell, from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. He didn't even look at me, just shook his head. It's not performance. Noah, it's budget, and that was it. No thank you. No acknowledgement, nothing. The drive home in my old Ford Ranger felt endless. Normally I blasted music to drown out my thoughts. But that day, silence sat next to me like a passenger, heavy, suffocating, unavoidable. One question looped in my mind like a cruel refrain. How do I tell my wife? Bills were already suffocating us. Credit card interest was ballooning. Mortgage payments were eating us alive. And Brittany, my wife, was fiercely pragmatic, brutally logical, almost cold when it came to money. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't comfort. She reacted. Hard. Losing my job wasn't just bad. News it was a grenade, and I knew exactly who it would explode on first. Me. I pulled into our driveway with my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The sun was still too high, too bright, almost mocking me as I stared at the house Brittany and I had fought so hard to keep, a house that suddenly felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. When I finally walked inside, Brittany was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, tapping her foot the way she always did when she was stressed. She didn't even glance up before asking, "Why are you home early?" Not gently, not lovingly, suspicion, sharp, immediate. I swallowed hard. Britt, something happened at work. Her eyes finally met mine, and what I saw there wasn't worry, it was calculation. The kind of look someone gives a sinking ship as they decide whether it's worth trying to save. What now, Noah? I handed her the letter with shaky fingers. She read it, once, twice. Her jaw tightened with every line. Then she tossed the paper onto the table like it was contaminated. You're unbelievable, she muttered. 30 years old and still can't hold down one single stable job. Do you understand what this means for us? For the mortgage? For everything? I didn't do anything wrong, I whispered. It was layoffs. Budget cuts, she scoffed. Excuses. That's all you ever bring home, excuses. And debt. Her words hit harder than the layoff itself. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but before I could speak, she grabbed her keys. I need space, she snapped. Figure out what you're going to do. And don't expect me to carry everything alone. The front door slammed. So hard the walls shook. I stood there numb, alone in the quiet, with nothing but the echo of her disappointment filling every corner of the house. By the time the sun set, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the termination letter like it could magically rewrite itself. But the truth stayed the same. My job was gone. My marriage was cracking. My life was collapsing faster than I could think, and just when I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. A short one, a cold one. Come home. We need to talk. 4 words that felt like a summons to Judgment Day. Didn't want to go. I wasn't ready, but I also knew my parents weren't the type to wait. So I grabbed my keys again, stepped back into the night, and drove toward the one place I hoped would give me comfort. But instead, it became the place that broke me even deeper. Pulled into our driveway with my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The sun was still too high, too bright, almost mocking me as I stared at the house Brittany and I had fought so hard to keep. A house that suddenly felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. When I finally walked inside, Brittany was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, tapping her foot the way she always did when she was stressed. She didn't even glance up before asking, "Why are you home early?" Not gently, not lovingly, suspicion, sharp, immediate. I swallowed hard. "Britt, something happened at work." Her eyes finally met mine, and what I saw there wasn't worry, it was calculation. The kind of look someone gives a sinking ship as they decide whether it's worth trying to save. "What now, Noah?" I handed her the letter with shaky fingers. She read it, once, twice. Her jaw tightened with every line. Then she tossed the paper onto the table like it was contaminated. "You're unbelievable," she muttered. 30 years old and still can't hold down one single stable job. "Do you understand what this means for us? For the mortgage? For everything?" "I didn't do anything wrong," I whispered. "It was layoffs. Budget cuts," she scoffed. "Excuses. That's all you ever bring home, excuses. And debt." Her words hit harder than the layoff itself. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but before I could speak, she grabbed her keys. "I need space," she snapped. "Figure out what you're going to do. And don't expect me to carry everything alone." The front door slammed so hard the walls shook. I stood there numb, alone in the quiet, with nothing but the echo of her disappointment filling every corner of the house. By the time the sun set, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the termination letter like it could magically rewrite itself. But the truth stayed the same. My job was gone. My marriage was cracking. My life was collapsing faster than I could think, and just when I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. A short one, a cold one. "Come home. We need to talk." 4 words that felt like a summons to Judgment Day. Didn't want to go. I wasn't ready, but I also knew my parents weren't the type to wait. So I grabbed my keys again, stepped back into the night, and drove toward the one place I hoped would give me comfort. But instead, it became the place that broke me even deeper. Sleep didn't come that night. Not even for a minute. I lay on the couch with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers to a life I didn't recognize anymore. Every time the refrigerator hummed, or a car passed outside, or the AC clicked on, my heart jumped like the world was whispering reminders that everything was falling apart. At around 6 a.m., when the sky was still pale and dull, I finally sat up. My back ached from the cheap cushions, but that was nothing compared to the ache under my ribs, the kind that comes from humiliation, fear, and the quiet certainty that you've disappointed everyone you love. Made coffee quietly, not wanting Brittany or Lily to wake up. The mug felt warm in my hands, steadying, grounding. For a few seconds, I imagined a world where yesterday never happened, where I still had a job, still had dignity, still had a family that believed in me. But reality always comes back, and it came back, cruelly. At 7:02 a.m., the bedroom door opened. Brittany stepped out with that same hard expression she'd worn the night before. She didn't say good morning, didn't look at me. She walked straight to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took out her green smoothie mix like I wasn't even there. Lily's small footsteps pattered after. She looked up at me with sleepy eyes and whispered, "Daddy?" I forced a smile. "Good morning, sweetheart." She only had time to hug my leg before Brittany snapped, "Lily, breakfast." The whole house felt like a courtroom, and I was the defendant who had already lost. 30 minutes later, after Lily left for school, Brittany finally turned to me, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Noah, I thought about what you said yesterday, and I've made a decision." My pulse quickened. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep carrying someone who brings nothing to the table. You lost your job. You have no savings. You have no future plan. You have nothing." Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was disappointed. "Spoke to my parents last night," she continued. "They agreed that this," she gestured around the house, "is not working. They said it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. So, we think you should leave. Move out. Figure your life out." Alone. Just like that. As if I were trash that needed to be taken out. My throat tightened. Brittany, this is my home. I'm Lily's father. And you'll still be her father, she said coldly. But she doesn't need to see a man who can't take care of himself. You being here like this, it breaks her. It breaks me. I felt my chest cave in. Where am I supposed to go? I whispered. That's for you to figure out. She handed me a small box with my things. Already inside, wallet, charger, 2 shirts, a framed photo of me holding Lily at the beach. She had packed it the night before. She had decided everything before I even woke up. I didn't argue, didn't curse, didn't cry. I just picked up the box, walked to the door, and stepped outside as Brittany shut it behind me, quietly, firmly, like sealing an envelope. The morning sun hit hard, too bright, too unforgiving. Stood in the driveway, with my box of belongings and an emptiness so heavy it felt like gravity. Doubled. I had nowhere to go. No job, no home, no family. I was nothing. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that everything was about to flip, because less than an hour later, a black Mercedes with tinted windows rolled into the street and stopped right in front of me. The house was too quiet when I stepped inside. Not peaceful quiet, dangerous quiet. The kind that tells you someone inside is already angry and waiting for you to come home so they can explode. Brittany was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, foot tapping, her expression sharp enough to cut metal. She didn't even wait for me to take off my shoes. So, she demanded, "Did you talk to Sanders?" I swallowed, throat dry. "Britt, he laid me off. Budget cuts." She laughed, not a sad laugh, not a shocked laugh, a disgusted laugh. I knew it. I knew someday this would happen. "Noah, you're 30, and you're still working a warehouse job like some high school dropout." The words hit harder than the layoff. I stood in the doorway, like a kid being scolded. "Worked hard," I muttered. "It wasn't performance." "Stop!" she snapped. "You always have an excuse. Always a reason. Always a story." Her eyes were cold. Too cold. "You can't even provide for this house. I married a man who promised me stability. But all I've gotten is debt and disappointment." Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, just a small, quiet break. The kind that hurts more because no one else hears it. "I'm trying," I whispered. "No, you're surviving," she shot back. "Barely. And now?" "We're drowning because you couldn't even keep a simple job." I tried to reach for her arm. She stepped back like my touch offended her. "You know what?" she said sharply. "Maybe my parents were right. Maybe I did marry." Down. That one tore my heart. Open. Brittany had never said that out loud, not once. But I had heard the whispers from her parents for years. She grabbed her bag, her keys, her jacket. "I'm going to stay at my mother's. I need space. And you need to figure out your life." The door slammed so hard the frame shook. I stood in the silence she left behind. Silence that felt heavier than the warehouse pallets I used to lift. Silence that said, "You're alone now, completely." I sank onto the couch, staring at the empty spot where she had been. Standing, lost, embarrassed, broken, wondering how everything had collapsed in a single afternoon. But what I didn't know, then what I couldn't have imagined, was that Brittany walking out wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because hours later, when the sun had disappeared, and the house was drowning in darkness, someone knocked on my door. Not gently, not timidly, a firm, deliberate knock, the kind of knock that changes lives. Stared at the lawyer's card for a long moment after he left, as if the embossed letters might suddenly rearrange themselves into something more believable, representing a billionaire. For me, it made no sense, but then again, nothing in my life had made sense lately. The walls of my apartment felt suddenly too quiet, too hollow. My thoughts bounced around like trapped birds. I paced from the door to the kitchen, then back again, gripping the card so tightly. The edges bit into my skin. The old Noah, the one who still believed life rewarded good people, wanted to wait, to think, to breathe, to calm down. But the Noah shaped by years of disappointment, rejection, and being called useless by his own parents. He knew opportunities didn't knock twice, so I grabbed my phone, hands trembling with a mix of fear and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then a calm, deep voice answered. "Mr. Rao," the lawyer said. as if he had been expecting me right that second. I appreciate your quick response. Are you able to meet today? Meet today? I looked around at my cluttered kitchen, my sink full of dishes, the bills pinned under a salt shaker because I didn't have a proper paperweight. My entire life looked like someone had pressed pause, right in the middle of a storm. What is this about? I managed. There was a silence on the other end, measured, delicate. Then he spoke. As I said earlier, a billionaire client of mine has business with you. It concerns an inheritance matter. My heart skipped. That has to be a mistake. I said automatically, no. He replied, voice unshakable. It's not a mistake. Mr. Rowe, this concerns your biological family. I froze. The entire world seemed to narrow around that one sentence. My what? I whispered. Your biological family, he repeated. And as strange as this will sound, your current parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rowe, are not legally or biologically connected to you. You were adopted at birth, and your birth father was a billionaire. The air left my lungs so suddenly I had to sit down. Adopted? A billionaire father, me. The words were too big, too heavy. I had no space in my brain for them. My parents never. But I stopped. They would hide something. Like that. Of course they would, the lawyer continued. We can discuss the full details in person. If possible, I'd like you to come to our office within the next hour. Within the next hour, my mind spun again. But this time with adrenaline instead of fear. Okay, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. Send me the address. The moment I hung up, I just sat there, silent, shaking. All those years of being told I was worthless, lazy, nothing. All those nights lying awake wondering why I was never enough. All those moments when my own parents looked at me with disappointment instead of love. And now a stranger was telling me I wasn't even theirs to begin. Within somewhere out there, a billionaire father had left something behind. Maybe answers, maybe money, maybe a truth that would tear open every lie I had ever lived with, whatever it was. I was done running from it. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. For the first time in my life, I felt it, a shift, a tilt, a crack in destiny itself. Whatever waited for me at that lawyer's office, it was bigger than anything I had ever imagined. The house was so quiet that I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, steady, cold, indifferent. I sat on the edge of the couch, fingers interlocked, staring at the front door like it held every answer I'd ever prayed for. But all it held was the echo of the lawyer's words still drilling into my skull. Mr. Noah Rowe, you are the sole heir. It didn't feel real. It didn't even feel possible. Me, Noah, the man people called useless, the man who got fired like trash, the man who was disowned by his own parents, and yet some billionaire I had never met chose me. I kept replaying the moment the lawyer handed me the envelope. The weight of it, the thickness of the documents inside, the embossed gold seal that screamed. Serious, I hadn't even opened everything yet. Didn't trust my hands to stay steady, but eventually I forced myself to. I tore the seal, unfolded the papers, and my eyes scanned line after line until one detail nearly stopped my breath. The billionaire's full name. Arthur Rowe, my last name. My pulse hammered so hard, I felt it in my teeth. No, it couldn't be. I read it again, slower this time. Arthur Rowe. There aren't many Rows in California. Not enough for that to be a coincidence. A sick swirl of confusion and fear churned inside me, because if he had my last name, then this wasn't charity. This wasn't random. This was blood family, someone. My parents never told me about someone they hid, someone they didn't want me to know existed. My throat went dry. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over my mother's contact. But calling her felt like walking into a fire. After what they did, after they called me useless and threw me out of their lives like garbage. Still, I needed answers. I needed truth, even if it burned. But before I could dial, there was a sharp knock on the door. Not hesitant, not confused, not firm, not purposeful. My heart froze for a split second. I thought, is it Brittany coming back to scream again? But no, that knock had too much authority in it, too much weight. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady, the envelope still crushed in my hand. I opened the door, and there he was again. The same lawyer, same suit, same expressionless calm. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood two men in dark shirts, black cases in their hands, cases that looked like they belonged in a bank vault. Not on my porch. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Noah, there's more you need to know, he said quietly, almost gently this time, and we need to go somewhere. My jaw clenched. Go where? He stepped aside slightly, revealing the car waiting on the curb. A black Mercedes engine running door. Open, to the estate, he replied. Your grandfather's estate. My stomach plummeted. My voice barely came out. My grandfather? To the estate, he replied. Your grandfather's estate. My stomach plummeted. My voice barely came out. My grandfather? The lawyer nodded once. Yes. Noah. Arthur Rowe wasn't just a billionaire. He paused, as if choosing each word like a surgeon. He was your father's father. My knees nearly gave out. Everything inside me went silent. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that comes right before a storm tears through everything you thought was true. And then he added the sentence that shattered the last thin layer of the world I knew. He left instructions to give you the truth, but only after his death. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even think. The man my parents pretended never existed. The man who left me his empire. The man whose blood ran in my veins. He had been alive this whole time, and my parents had kept him from me. The lawyer tilted his head slightly. Noah, are you ready? I swallowed hard because nothing about this was something you prepare for, but I stepped out anyway, into the heat, into the unknown, into the truth that had been hidden from me for 30 years. Noah's hands trembled as he opened the final envelope from the lawyer. The air in the room felt electric, charged with a mix of fear, disbelief, and an excitement he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Inside was a single page, crisp and official. The words blurred as he read them over and over. The billionaire, someone he had only heard whispers of in the city's gossip circles, was leaving a significant portion of his fortune to him. Not just a token amount, enough to pay off every debt, rebuild his life, and then some. Enough to finally breathe again. Noah sank into the chair, a strangled laugh escaping his throat. After years of being told he was useless, after being disowned and humiliated, after scraping by while everyone else seemed to float effortlessly through life, he was being handed a lifeline. A golden lifeline, and then, unexpectedly, a single thought cut through the euphoria. He didn't need to hide anymore. He didn't need to pretend or apologize or chase someone else's approval. The world could see him now, not as a failure, not as Noah the clown, but as someone who had survived, endured, and finally, against all odds, had been recognized for his worth. The next moments blurred into a montage in his mind, paying off the mortgage, calling Brittany, finally standing tall in front of the people who had doubted him, and then stepping into a life he had only dared to imagine in fleeting daydreams. And somewhere deep inside, Noah smiled, truly smiled. Not the small anxious grin he offered to co-workers at the warehouse, not the nervous half-smile to mask fear, but a real smile, the kind that comes when you realize life finally owes you nothing, and you owe it nothing in return, because sometimes the world can be cruel, unfair, and devastating, and sometimes it can also be miraculous. And in that miraculous moment, Noah knew this was his redemption, his new beginning, his life finally fully his own.